Hello and welcome to my presentation on women, prisons, and cognition in Washington State. My name is America Sanchez and I'm a law and justice major here at Central with a minor in business. I'm currently a 4.0 student and expect to graduate next spring. I participate in the Law and Justice Club as the co-vice president and the camp program. On my free time, I like to hang out with my friends and go out and find new places to adventure. Before I begin, I'd like to give a special thank you to my mentor, Christine Henderson, for helping me and guiding me through this research. I'd also like to thank the source judges for their time and the IF Project and Seattle University as they played a crucial role to my research. Now let's begin. So right now there is a current need to construct gender-based reentry and rehabilitation correctional programs in Washington State, although I will be focusing on women's prisons. And this need is because there are gender differences in rehabilitation, such as women having more components that hinder the social support that they receive. And although the two women's prisons in Washington State, WSCCW and MCCCW, have gender-based restorative programs, there are gaps in programming and research that stifle these models in place. And that is why future research, such as the one I am proposing, is needed to examine how personal responsibility models, like prison writing programs, increase success in beliefs, behaviors, and past and future crime pathways. And later I will talk more about my study. However, it is a qualitative exploratory study based on a constructivist paradigm that will help gain a better understanding of mental gender-based cognitive programming. And with this study, my mentor and I hope to develop and create a gender-based cognitive model for pre- and post-incarceration at Washington State women's prisons. Like I mentioned, there are gender-based differences for rehabilitation. However, there are also gender-based differences for experiences in the criminal justice system. For instance, women have a 37% chance of reoffending, whereas incarcerated men have a 52% chance of reoffending. However, this is not taken into consideration during sentencing. So women face unfair disadvantages because they are sentenced at the same way that men are sentenced, even though women have lower chances of reoffending. Furthermore, there are less programs in women's prisons than there are in men's prisons, and the programs that they do have available to them are not acknowledging and targeting the traumatic paths that led these women into the criminal justice system enough. This little recognition is a problem because allowing these incarcerated women to face and correct their paths is crucial to rehabilitation. And these programs are greatly needed by incarcerated women because they face higher rates of mental health, substance, and sexual abuse problems than men do, and women are also being incarcerated more than men. So the IF Project is a prison writing program that was founded by a detective and an inmate. And in this program, there are writing workshops that focus around one central question, that is, if there was something someone could have said or done that would have changed the path that led you here, what would it have been? This prison program works with the incarcerated women to answer that central question and use their answer to set them up for success upon reentry. The IF Project is important in my research because I will be looking at how the IF Project and programs like the IF Project increase success in cognitive-based therapy in Washington State prisons. Seattle University has actually conducted 2 studies on the IF Project already. However, they identified a gap in the literature, and I am using their recommendation for future research as a basis for my research. Furthermore, I will be looking at the 2 women's prisons in Washington State. So the problem is that there's not enough research to provide incarcerated women with proper treatment programs that allow them to acknowledge and address their gender-based risks and needs for efficient reentry. And my study will target this problem and hope to fill the gap in the literature. And with my research, there will be an improvement in understanding of mental gender-based cognitive programming and how programs like the IF Project increase cognitive therapy for women incarcerated in Washington. And like I briefly mentioned, current literature, especially the Seattle University studies, clearly indicate the need for this future research. So now I'll move on to my literature review. And as many of us know, Washington State has legalized marijuana. However, the scale of which women were jailed was not reduced by much. I'd now like to highlight two Washington State prison programs that I feel are relevant. The first one is Substance Abuse Recovery Unit, also known as SARU. This program has services that provide a specialized focus on correcting criminal thinking errors, relapse prevention and management, and gender-specific trauma-based therapy. Although this program targets important topics, there are some indistinct aspects. For example, it is not clear if marijuana is included. Like I mentioned before, marijuana is now legalized, so we do not know if they are targeting marijuana, which it is important to target marijuana because it is often a gateway drug. It is also not clear whether this program works with other prison programs that participants may be in to connect participants' progress and help them succeed further. The next prison program that I'd like to talk about is Washington Libraries for Successful Reentry, also known as WALSR. Prisons across Washington state have libraries accessible to inmates, and WALSR works to connect these inmates with the libraries and help them be more familiar with information so that they can be more successful for reentry. During my literature review, I focused on keywords such as rehabilitation, mental health, education, and collaboration, because these are key aspects to cognitive-based treatment programs like the IF Project. Through my research, I was able to conclude that programs like the IF Project are supported as it promotes all four of these keywords positively. Furthermore, research is a huge aspect of collaboration because correctional facilities can use research to improve their prison programs. Literature that I like to highlight is the Seattle University studies of the IF Project. In the first study, researchers used the IF Project to help identify risk factors to criminal paths. And researchers were also able to conclude that the IF Project does help inmates heal. In the second one, researchers evaluated the IF Project as a whole and its effectiveness, and they were able to conclude that it was indeed effective. However, Helfgott and her research team highlighted the importance of future research. And that is this future research that I am trying to do by examining how prison writing programs increase success in cognitive behavioral treatment programs. As I said, there is an identified gap in the literature, and that is what I'm trying to fill with my research. I believe that this research is essential as the study's outcome could revolutionize how society approaches incarcerated women's mental health, prison programming, and cognition therapy in Washington state and change policy evaluation. In turn, all of this can help reduce the already overburdened correctional system. So far, I have watched the IF Project documentary, which was what inspired me to conduct this research, and then I created keywords that helped with my literature review. And although I'm not fully done with my entire study, the research I have done so far has proved my initial observations correct. Initially, I believed that programs like the IF Project are efficient and necessary in helping inmates with their rehabilitation process, and by the research that I have done, I was correct. This has given me more of an incentive to go ahead and conduct interviews and analyze the data that I gather from those interviews to then draw some conclusions. For my study, I will interview IF Project Board of Directors and an Executive Director, Washington State Department of Corrections, superintendents at 2 Washington State Department of Corrections for Women, and 2 correctional officers, and possibly Seattle University professors and researchers. From the interviews, I hope to understand the participants' social issue of gender-based cognitive and WIT approaches for women incarcerated in Washington. And again, I hope to develop and create a gender-based cognitive model for pre- and post-incarceration at Washington State women's prisons. Going into my study and interviews, there will be no predetermined framework. So for my investigative techniques, of course, I will have those interviews with the field experts previously named, and I will have 4 central questions, and because there is no predetermined framework, I will let the conversation flow freely and ask open-ended questions. And of course, again, this study is based on literature. And these are the 4 questions that I will use in my interviews to help me understand treatment programs in Washington state prisons better. And this research is important because it'll create a model for prisons to use, and ideally it'll help women come out of correctional systems in better condition. And because this research includes human participants, I will take ethical considerations such as anonymity, confidentiality, and informed consent. To reach accurate conclusions and to answer all of my questions, I will assume that all participants answer fully and honestly. The study is solely on the 2 women's prisons in Washington state and limited to Washington state. It is also limited to correctional experts' professional opinion and experience. My research stems from the 2 Seattle University studies and the gap in literature that they identified. In addition, it stems from the Washington DOC programs, and it'll give the IF project credence and answer how the IF project combined with the DOC programs really make a difference and what kind of difference they make in order to develop a model. And here are the DOC programs that I am talking about. In conclusion, this research is essential in developing an efficient and successful gender-based cognitive treatment program. Doing so can help transform society as well. As for a future timeline, I plan to begin conducting interviews on June 7, 2021, and have them concluded by June 21, 2021. I also plan on having my data analysis done by July 30th, 2021, and I will reach conclusions drawing themes from my participants' responses. I also hope to publish my work so that correctional facilities can use and help incarcerated women in the rehabilitation process. Here are my references, and thank you for your time.